All right, 19 minutes before the top of the hour. On Monday, the United Kingdom will host the UK-Africa Investment Summit in London. The summit will be hosted by British Prime Minister Boris Johnson and will bring together businesses, governments, as well as international institutions. The summit seeks to mobilise new and substantial investment to create jobs and boost mutual prosperity. So, to tell us more, we're joined in studio by British High Commissioner to South Africa, Nigel Casey, and of course, he is going to be in attendance at the summit. Good to have you. Thanks so much for coming in, High Commissioner.
Morning, Leanne. Good to have you. Good to be on the show.
I can imagine that it's a bit disappointing for you being here in South Africa and also going to be there. That news came out last night that President Cyril Ramaphosa is not going to be present there. What do you think that means for the country?
Look, this is a bit of a first for us. We are trying to do something which is atypical for an investment conference. Instead of attracting investment to the UK, we're trying to promote outward investment, mainly by the private sector, into Africa. We've got 15 or 16 heads of government or state coming to the event. It's disappointing not to have President Ramaphosa, but we know that will be a senior South African team, and South Africa will have an opportunity to sell itself, to present the investment case for investors coming here, particularly new ones, but also those who are here already. So it's a great platform for governments from around Africa, and it responds to something which they've asked us to help them focus on. That is driving private sector engagement into Africa.
Yeah, I suppose one would respect the decision from the President, especially seeing the situation that South Africa finds itself in. There are many urgent issues that need to be attended to, and with a high-level delegation going, I don't think we'll miss out opportunities. Does that influence investors in any way?
Look, I think investors in London had a chance to hear from President Ramaphosa in October. He attended the Financial Times Africa Summit, so he had a chance quite recently to make that pitch. So I think South Africa's voice will be present. But this is a broader event, really, for the continent. And I think you're going to see a mixture of announcements, both commercial and governmental in nature. But the USP of this event, because, there are lots of these big summits. Africa has these summits with China, with Russia, with the EU. This one is focused very tightly on outward direct investment, which we see as really catalytic for driving growth in the continent. And it's something that we think we have a strength in. The City of London has long been a conduit for outward investment into Africa, both British money and other international investment flowing through the city. There's a range of unique financial instruments available in the city, which we want to showcase to governments and investors from around the continent.
Yeah, and yet, as you mentioned at the beginning of the interview, it's still been it's a more beneficial relationship for the UK and London as opposed to South Africa and Africa. I mean, if we look at some of the numbers, South Africa is the third biggest trading partner for the UK and the Commonwealth. However, trade is still tipped in the UK's favour. Total exports, 94.4 billion rand. Total imports, 93.4 billion rand. I'm happy to hear that there is this shift that will be taking place and that's hoping will happen to have further income coming in as opposed to going out.
I don't recognise those figures, actually. Our figures suggest that South Africa enjoys a trade balance, and I'm expecting that to grow, if anything. We've just signed an agreement with SACU, which will replace the existing economic partnership agreement we have through the EU, which we're currently a member of, which we're leaving at the end of this month. That, I expect, will provide headroom for further growth, particularly in exports of South African wine and agricultural produce, which is in heavy demand in our supermarkets. So I'm optimistic about the future of UK-South Africa trade, but this conference is really about investment rather than trade. We're the largest single investor here in South Africa, as we are in other major markets, but we are not complacent about that. Other countries are making a big push into Africa, particularly China. We see this as sort of friendly competition, and we want to remain a leading partner, a leading investor in this continent. That's good for Africa. It's not so much just about profits for UK investors, but about helping Africa develop and grow.
If we talk and we look at South Africa, and many people talking about foreign investment into South Africa, but the concerns, there are major concerns as well. We look at our electricity situation, and I think that one at the moment is topping the list of concerns for investors. What do you hear in the UK with regard to the situation in the country?
What I find every time I go back to London is there is huge interest in South Africa. It is not the fastest growing economy in Africa. There's faster growth in East Africa and in countries like Rwanda, but it is a mature, developed market. British companies have been here for decades or longer. They're here for the long term. They see business cycles come and go. They are interested in the direction of travel. They want to hear from senior leaders here about their plans and intentions, and they want to know the long-term story because they are prepared to invest long-term and see beyond the immediate difficulties. The power supply issue that you mentioned is one of the issues that we have raised with us. Other frequent ones are around policy certainty, regulation of some big sectors. There's a particular interest at the moment in getting on with the allocation of new mobile broadband spectrum, which will unlock a new wave of investment in telecom sector, enabling South Africa to really live its ambition to be a leading player in the fourth industrial revolution. So there are important decisions people are listening out for, listening for signals, decisions on, and we're hoping we'll get a bit of that on Monday.
Yeah, good. Well, I hope so. And I can imagine there's a major focus on Brexit. The deal and the no deal and what the UK is going to look like after all of this. Is that going to be one thing that I imagine is going to be spoken about throughout this entire investment conference?
To be honest, I doubt it, because the focus is really on Africa. People now know, since we had a decisive result in our general election in December, that we will be leaving the EU at the end of this month with an agreement with the EU. That's passing through our Parliament right now. So there is certainty on that front, and we will be moving ahead with that process. We'll be in a new relationship with our EU partners from the end of this month, but that will be in a stable, clear context with an agreement with our friends and partners in the EU. So I think that's, in a sense, meant that this is not likely to be the central topic of discussion at this particular event.
Possibly, but I think a lot of people want to know if it's going to be affected in any way. I mean, whether or not the UK leaving the EU is going to have any relations or impact whatsoever on different trading partners that you have in the continent. Is it? Where does it leave Africa?
Well, I think it presents a positive opportunity. As I've said, we've already negotiated a successor agreement as the UK, ready to kick in when the UK leaves the EU, and the transition period at the end of that ends at the end of this year. So we're ready to go with that. It's a dynamic agreement that leaves room for expansion, and we're doing the same with our other trading partners around the continent. So we're investing for the future. We're not just on the trade side. We've opened 5 new diplomatic missions in Africa. I've given up my jobs as High Commissioner to Lesotho and Eswatini because we've reopened our embassies there. We're opening in 3 other countries we've never been present in before. We're adding 400 extra staff to our network. So we're reinvesting in our long-term partnership with Africa, and I'm excited to be part of that here in South Africa.
Good. I'm happy to hear that, and I think a lot of other people listening, and you know, with investment being stabilised and relations between the two countries stable as well is a good thing. Let's talk a little bit briefly about one of the biggest stories. I mean, never mind Brexit, we talk about Mexit. I mean, that's a big one coming out of the UK. This was quite a surprise, wasn't it? Harry and Meghan wanting to sort of stop their duties. How did that sort of come as news for you?
Well, look, I can't claim any special knowledge of that. We were really delighted to have the couple here in South Africa last September and October. You'll remember they had a fantastic visit.
Yeah. The last one, actually, the last one that we're seeing as an official visit for the royalty.
Well, who knows? The discussions going on at the moment, as you know, about the precise arrangements for the future. And we'll have to wait and see exactly what those throw up. But you know, I know from direct personal experience what a positive impact their visit made here, so we'll look forward to hearing more about arrangements for the future.
Yeah, I can imagine. It just shows you how much interest there still is in the royal family and everything. I mean, this is probably one of the biggest stories that people are speaking about for a long, long time to come, and we'll see what it results in. But one of the centre causes of it, of course, is the whole racism debate. And I mean, I'm not necessarily going to ask you to analyse media reports and everything, but that's also having a bit of a reputational damage, one would imagine, on the media in the UK.
Yeah, look, I think there has been a bit of a spotlight put on the media coverage of the couple. I think I probably should be a little bit careful in what I say at that point, and try and avoid getting dragged down that route. As I say, we had a fantastic visit with them here, and I think the the real power of that visit was in the causes which they espoused, which I think really resonated with people here in South Africa, whether that was around youth empowerment, skills, mental health, gender-based violence, all the things which their passion for came out very clearly during the visit.
Yeah, no, it was a good visit, and yeah, I am throwing you a bit on the spot there, I can imagine. As politics, that's not something you want to get involved in, no doubt. But nonetheless, we look forward to this the summit that's coming up. It's going to be a big one. The British High Commissioner talking to us about this. Nigel Casey is the British Commissioner to South Africa. So Monday, the United Kingdom will host the UK-Africa Investment Summit in London. The bad news for South Africa is that our President Cyril Ramaphosa won't be in attendance, but there's still a high-level delegation going through. The good news, he's attending to issues, very pressing issues that are happening here back home. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Let's take a break.